What's going on over here? We're talking about being present, and you two on the sides over here.
Rob makes faces all the time, and I don't even think he realizes he's making them, and I just enjoy it. Sorry.
I didn't even do anything.
Every time I go to talk, Polar over here.
I was listening.
Thank you. And I think in my own spiritual life, I have found that the world, because all I want is those moments with my family that are heaven all the way to heaven.
Can I elaborate on
Rob.
this? I'm so sorry.
Why were you calling a timeout?
I shouldn't have. I'm not present.
Oh my gosh.
Once again, if you'd like to be part of future live streams, bonus content, and support the show, and make sure that we're able to have, some green label on the table in front of us next time, please join the Men's Show patron community over at themenshow.com. Right, I have that right. It's called the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, and ladies are invited too. And you can access that via the Awaken app. So the next topic was
It's going to be extravagant.
Let me introduce the next topic by reading a quick catechism quote. So this is Catechism 2565, and it's in part of the catechism about prayer. And the catechism makes this comment: thus, the life of prayer is the habit of being in the presence of the thrice holy God and in communion with Him. And basically, what I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight, reflect on, is that phrase there, this habit of presence. Certainly, we have a difficulty being in the presence of God, and we have difficulty being in the presence of other people. How do we? Why is it so hard for, I guess, first of all, to just be present to people these days?
Hyperstimulation. Hyperstimulation.
Yes.
I think we're always able to distract ourselves. We're always able to prevent ourselves from wandering and lifting our hearts to God with instant gratification. I think for me, that's a difficulty often.
Yeah, there's a lack of silence in our world and in our lives. And when we're not silent, we can't really hear the voice of God. I think it was Thomas Merton said, silence like the sunlight will illuminate you in God. And so there's this great gift of silence. Cardinal Sarah talks about this in his most recent work, how important silence is to actually encountering who God is. But because we feel uncomfortable with silence, even in prayer, we tend to just pray, talking, rather than just sitting in silence, become comfortable. It's really hard then, if we can't be present with God and allow Him to be present with us and be comfortable with us, to then do that to the people who are just all around us. And one of my favorite things, it's so funny being a dad now too. What? Holer. Anyway.
Present, Rob. Be present.
Yeah.
I'm here.
One of the great joys I feel like having as a father is just like, I know this will sound kind of weird, but it's just like, just sitting there and just watching my kids. I'm blown away by their otherness, by their innocence, by their beauty, by how just amazing God has made them. And it's made me think that's how I need to be towards everyone in my life. My kids play a special role or part there. But really that's the challenge we have and that's what it means in the workplace to be kingdom efficient, is whoever comes to your door to be fully I'm there. Yeah. And when you read about the saints, that's what they made me feel like I was the only person in the room.
Yeah. Nick Meyer is asking, so with that comment, Pete, if he should shut down the live stream and, get some silence. No.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to do.
The Men's Show is in fact, the only exception to the rule.
Forming conscience.
Or pretty much anything from Awaken Catholic, you're good.
A blanket exception.
Yeah, blanket exception.
We could take a moment.
And you're back. And something I find what got me thinking about this, Pete, was precisely the connection between those two scenarios, right? My ability and my practicing the habit of being in the presence of the thrice holy God in prayer. That's, in some sense, that's what our prayer is. It's practicing the presence, as Brother Lawrence puts it, practicing the presence of God. But the connection between the being in the presence of other people and being in the presence of God, that we're practicing the same really the same relational habit in either of those scenarios. And I guess one of the things that got me thinking about it is that recognizing that if we're practicing it in one area, we should be seeing the fruits in the other areas, but vice versa. If we're not, like maybe if we don't practice that in terms of the people in our lives that we spend, I mean, practically speaking, most of us have to spend a lot of time with people every day, kids and our spouse and our coworkers. If we're not practicing it with them very much at all, and then we're turning around and going into prayer, then we're recognizing that we've missed a lot of opportunities to practice precisely that skill that we need to turn on when we're in prayer, because we are in the presence of another person. And that it's less important what we're saying and more important that we're being in the presence of God. We're being attentive to that. We're being aware of that. And so like we're practicing the habit in both those scenarios, this habit of being in the presence of someone.
Yeah. In my own life, like when I become aware of myself struggling to be present, it is directly correlative.
Correllian transport, YT 1300.
It directly correlates to any circumstance in which I am not letting God be God. So for me, and this is my unique subjective iteration of this, for me, when I am feeling anxious or overwhelmed and I have to be the one to figure out a problem, I have to be the one to solve this thing or that thing, and I'm bearing a pressure that no one's asking me to bear, or even if they are asking me to bear it, doesn't mean that they're right to ask me to bear it, that like I can still be the one to say, oh, no, let's put this on God's shoulders. And it's when I'm not doing that I have a hard time being present, because my mind is so wrapped up in the problem solving, in the action, the activity, the whatever, the proactiveness. I'm having a hard time with words now, and there's been no whiskey, which I blame you for, viewers.
Yeah, it's dehydration rather than
join our patron community. So anyways, yeah. So that's just what you were saying made me think about that in my own life. That like and what I just described, everything I just laid out, is like every day. Right. Like it's something that I ongoingly struggle with.
Yeah, there seems there's different reasons why we would go into prayer and find it difficult to sit still. Different people have different sources of that anxiety, but certainly one, and maybe this seems to be what you're getting at a little bit, is sort of the practical atheism that we walk around. Mm-hmm. You posted on Facebook a while back. Like every time we worry, in some sense, some part of our heart is being atheist. Like we're not actually thinking God is a provident, loving Father, and it will be okay. I am safe. I am loved. I am beloved. Mm-hmm. There's a part of us that doesn't really believe that. And so it's hard to sit still and be in the presence of God because we're not really fully convinced. And that's something we have to work on and pray about.
Yeah, Nick Meyer says he's glad that we are able to provide dispensations. So
good. Yes.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Pete?
Well, it's a different topic, but it was almost like it gets into the question, like, why do bad things happen to good people? Because like everything isn't going to be okay, like on this side of heaven.
Right.
And so it's tough because, your child could die. 9/11 happened. And I quoted this earlier with somebody else, but the firefighters were running up the towers. They were telling everybody coming down, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. They were trying to calm people, but the reality was like, they knew everything wasn't going to be okay, and the people seeing them going down the stairs were like, we could tell in their eyes that they were scared as all get out, just like we were scared, And so, yeah, like what are we trusting God to actually do though, in the midst of our busyness and craziness? Are we expecting or trusting that he's going to work everything out and everything's going to work out peachy keen and it's going to be good for us on this side? Or is it like, is he working everything for our eternal salvation? Mm-hmm. And I think that second half,
ultimately everything becomes okay in the grand scheme.
Yeah, but it doesn't separate us from like the pain we experience.
No, but that's all temporary.
It precisely provides the interpretation for the things we experience, because an implication is not that on this side of heaven, it's not a health and wealth gospel sort of thing, that if I pray, God will make me wealthy, he'll take care of me, I can have a big cushy retirement. It is that there's two options here. If I do trust God with Job, then I make the choice to, in light of that relationship, to interpret even the evils that I experience as somehow being in the the direct or permissive will of God. That somehow, from his perspective, even though this is an evil, and maybe it's somebody else's evil, something that they're doing to me, God still is allowing this because he can bring good out of it. That's still, there's a choice. Like either I'm going to believe that or I'm not. God is big enough to even take the evils and bring good out of them.
Yeah, and it's tough because I think God does desire our good on this side of earth, and he wants to bestow good gifts on us. I think it was Columbier who said, like, God, he wants to give us, actually wants to lavish us on this side of earth, but like the main thing for us to receive even the prayers that we've been asking for is that we seek first the kingdom of God.
Yes.
And then our Father knows that we need all the other things and he wants to provide those. But if we're not seeking first the kingdom,
then it's just going to hinder us if he gives us the other things.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the comment you made earlier when we were talking about comfort. You know, it's like this isn't heaven. Like God does, you know, we're trying to make this heaven. And I say, well, we really are, but I think we fundamentally misunderstand what that is.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point.
I think relationship with God is
Heavenly.
Yeah, and ill and misfortune that happens on earth can lead to deeper and more abiding relationship with God.
and your
But that's
fellow
not the purpose.
And your fellow.
family members and
Family
brothers and
members,
sisters.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, every great story has the hero overcoming some great pain, difficulty, sin, evil. Like that is the story of mankind because it's the story of Jesus Christ, right?
And it's like the epitaph at Easter, you know, that there's sin and evil entered into the world. It says, oh, happy fault.
Happy fault.
Oh, necessary sin of Adam that earned for us so great a Redeemer. So the idea that we, in the garden, you know, we're not as close to God as we are now through Christ. You know, had sin and evil never befallen the world, we would not be able to be with God in heaven in the same way.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
speculatively, I guess. I don't know.
No, I think that's right. It's a paradox. I don't know if we
it
can,
is paradoxical.
because God doesn't want necessarily sin to happen, but he uses it for something even greater. He allows it. Yeah.
Something greater to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that have you guys heard the string example? You even told this to me. The string example?
Yeah, that's a nice.
Go for it. Or don't.
Well, I don't.
Live your life.
Maybe it doesn't relate.
It's an interesting example. It just talks about, and it's no analogy is perfect or anything, but it just says like God holds each one of us up by a string, and when we sin, we cut the string and we fall, we separate ourselves from God. But then God takes the string and he ties a knot, drawing us a little bit closer to him. So that every time we sin, we cut, but then God ties it and he continues to draw us
So
closer
should
and
we
closer
sin on
to him.
purpose so we can get closer to him?
No,
No.
that's not the point of the story. The point is where
That
sin
God
abounds,
brings-
grace abounds all the more. That God uses mysteriously even our bad choices for his ultimate purpose and
And
glory.
evils and suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from a relationship standpoint, even in our human relationships, it's the people that we have endured challenges with and come out the other side of it stronger. Like that, those are the relationships that are the deepest. It's not just like who were you near geographically or in proximity for an extended amount of time. It's who have you journeyed with, who have you gone through some tough stuff with. Those are the relationships that bring you closer. And so, like, going back to that original paradox, like we were, gallivanting through the garden. Everything was bubbles and farts. And I don't know if we farted back then, but it's a saying. Trust me. And so, anyways, everything's bubbles and farts. We're gallivanting, whatever.
He just wanted to say it again.
Third time's the charm.
But we never, in that context, would have had the sacraments. We never, in that context, would have had heaven and like this insane integration into like the divinity of the Trinity while also remaining individual and unique, and like just all the mysteries surrounding all the beauty that will be eternity for us. Like it would not have been that. And maybe it was also awesome, but like I think that what the church proposes is that like it's even more awesome now because we went through some crap with him.
Don't trust a fart.
Dang it, Rob.
No, but like at the time it was all pleasant and yummy, and now we've had all these whatever number of thousands of years of humanity and how much longer we have, as a human family that we've gone through some stuff with God. When we killed him and he came back from the dead, like we've gone through some stuff with him, and the relationship we can have with him more now is all the more profound and mind blowing than what it would have been without that.
I like your connection. Yeah. And this is again one of the things that got me thinking about this topic is just how we can in our battle of prayer, so to speak, battling through our anxiety, through our inability to sit still, our anxiety about silence, learning about that relationship with God, that habit of being in the presence of God. We should take those lessons and turn around and practice them, with other people.
Yeah.
We're learning the habits of relationship, and vice versa too. I mean, an example I was thinking about lately, I've been trying to find efficient, good, quality ways to give my kids good quality time in a busy schedule, in a busy life, in a big, messy, noisy family. And what I've been trying to do this past year, and it's really sort of gotten into a rhythm this past month, is, before bed, I call each one of them out of their, once they're in bed, they're kind of quieting down. I call each of the little girls, for instance, out, come sit on my lap. And I just give them 3 minutes. And my mantra in my mind is, they're setting the agenda for this. Like, I'm not coming here with something I'm going to teach them and tell them. I'm going to, how are you doing? And I really just want them to be able to share what's ever on their heart. Now, oftentimes it's Legos, oftentimes it's Pokemon, sometimes it's fairy stories. But for that few minutes, I want to practice just sitting back and being like letting them set the agenda. And it occurred to me after I was doing that for a while, I was going into prayer one day, and that mantra occurred to me. Oh, like I need to have that in my mind when I go to prayer. God, certainly I'm going to pray the Liturgy of the Hours, or I'm going to do a bit of a rosary, whatever. But I have to have in my back of my mind that, God, you're setting the agenda for this. I'm showing up for it, but whatever you want to do with this time,
Wow, yeah.
if you want to turn me to something different, if you want to bring me into some thought, whatever, I want to focus on being present to the living Almighty God, and that's the first and foremost part of that dialogue, is that He's setting the agenda. He's here, and my words, my feeble attempts to pray are secondary. So again, just seeing kind of the learning back and forth in those relationships is kind of what I had on my
Absolutely.
mind.
Peter Kreft was on Matt Frad's show the other day. So what's going on over here? We're talking about being present,
I know,
and you
I'm
two
sorry.
on the
Rob
sides over
makes,
here.
Rob makes faces all the time, and I don't even think he realizes he's making them, and I just enjoy. Sorry.
I didn't even do anything.
Every time I go to talk, Holler over here.
I was listening.
Thank you.
Well, apparently
Anyway.
my son
know what
Augustine is
happened.
upstairs, and I didn't know Lena was like watching the live stream upstairs. Yeah. Apparently Augustine's walking around saying, "Don't trust the fart. Don't trust the fart."
I shouldn't have said that.
No, I'm glad you did. All right, Peter,
I'm
what were you
sorry.
trying to say? Peter Kraft.
Yeah, Dr. Peter Kreft says, like, the reason we fight all the battles, that we go out and we work hard, that we, save money, all those things, while we go and fight, World War II, we do all of that for that one moment where your daughter sits on your lap, and it's just a moment of love, of presence. And I think in my own spiritual life, I have found that, like, the moment that Gianna in particular, and connect with the boys in the same way, but Gianna's my first. So, I mean, that moment that she stops and just looks up at me, and I can look at her and just be completely present. Like, that's all I want out of life. And that's why I fight so hard in the outside world, because all I want is those moments with my family that are heaven, all the way to heaven.
Can I elaborate on
Rob.
this? I'm so sorry.
Why were you calling a timeout?
I shouldn't have. I'm not present.
Gosh.
That reminds me, like, when I read The Lord of the Rings, I read the whole thing for the very first time, and there's just this huge epic battle, and they're making their way back home. They finally get to the Shire, and then it goes on and on and on. It never ends, right? But at the real end of the book of The Lord of the Rings, it is Samwise Gamgee who marries Rosie, and Eleanor sits on his lap with her golden curls.
Yeah.
And it's like, it clearly pointed to me like the purpose of the whole epic journey, difficulty was like, that moment, the family, the love for his daughter, like, and I just cried.
Yeah.
I
just cried.
I just wanted to right now.
You're so right,
I held
Pete.
it back.
Yeah.
You're so right.
Thanks,
That
Rob.
book reminded me of how right you are.
It took us
They've
getting into
actually
the
been-
third episode for you guys to agree on something. But
No. I agree.
Exaggeration.
I agree with quite a bit of things
Cuban.
that Pete says.
Most of them. 99.
I disagree with quite a bit of things that Rob says, but I love the man.
We're gonna go back to the voting system. You viewers, if you want to chime in the comments, who's winning any particular argument?
We're not winning. It's there's
winning. And the losers.
Where are we
You don't
at
wanna
in
know.
time for this topic?
We have precisely 8.5 minutes.
I've got 9 minutes before I got to go.
Oh no!
Oh my
no,
God,
you
goodness
stick around.
gracious.
Let me text my wife and not be present to you guys for a
Sounds
second.
good. I was going to bring up that another great episode here on Awaken Catholic on Andrew's show, Physically Spiritual, another awesome show here on Awaken Catholic. He had an episode about meditation, and there's a clip that you guys pulled out from that talking about like meditation and anti-meditation that I was thinking of in this context. And he was talking about, meditative prayer. Where part of what we're doing when we do meditative prayer, you take a piece of scripture, you read it, maybe you place yourself in it. Well, part of what you're doing, that whole process, is practicing the ability just to focus on one thing for any extended length of time.
Yeah.
And the first time you meditate, it might be like 2.5 seconds, perhaps. You want to work up from there, being able to stay present to one thought, one reflection for more than 2.5 seconds. But then he was also pointing out too that like how many of the things that we do constantly throughout the day. So this is an important thing. Even though we might be intentional about trying to be present to God in prayer, present to our families, are we filling all the rest of our time with precisely those things that precisely counteract our effects at practicing being present? And he was giving examples like social media or different forms of entertainment, where precisely the nature of the thing is that it sucks us in and holds us there. So we don't have to exert any will, any effort to focus on the thing. It just locks us in.
Yeah.
And so it's precisely atrophying the spiritual muscles, if you will, of being able to focus, being able to be present. And if you fill your life with a lot of that stuff that just locks you in, sucks you in, you're like working against your efforts in prayer and in relationship to build the muscle of presence and focus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree that that's a struggle.
Well, I think there's scientific studies on what the cell phones are doing to us and our ability to concentrate and focus. I've noticed that just reading, the ability to stay focused in a book.
Even analyzing some of the different forms of entertainment that we have, like movies and music, the way that they're produced now specifically cater to our society's decreased ability to retain focus on something for any amount of time.
That's why our news is,
The news cycle, everything. Songs, it's like you got to be grabbed by some new, even if you don't realize what's happening to you subconsciously, what it is that you're hearing that's holding your attention. But like from a production standpoint, I'm a music producer, and like you got to do so much to introduce the smallest additional element after 8 bars or 4 bars even, just to like make sure the listener is like still getting something new, giving them that dopamine feed, whatever. Like that's where we're at now, and it's only getting worse as it's an addiction, right? Because the worse it gets, the more we have to pander to it, and then the more we pander to it, the worse it gets, and it's like this crazy cyclical thing. We've gotten 2 votes for Colleen.
Oh, I agree.
I agree.
I vote for Colleen.
You know what? Next time we do this, Colleen gets a camera. We're going to put a camera on you next time, Colleen.
That'd be hilarious.
That's literally what Kevin just texted me.
Oh, did he really? That's awesome. All right. So we have 5.5 minutes on this topic. Anything else?
Well, I was just thinking more, as you're saying, like, again, we often think of things like Facebook or social media or different forms of entertainment. Well, this is just neutral, right? It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's just sort of neutral. And that may be true in a sense of like there's no morally objectionable content. Fine, perhaps. But this aspect of it we really need to be aware of. Is it in a very aggressive way working against, are you losing your gains, man? Your spiritual gains. I mean, you go to prayer and you're working up your spiritual biceps of being able to focus for an extended length of time on God, the person who's present to you or in your relationships. Mm-hmm. Are you precisely like using things that are making you weak, that are precisely working against that ability to be present to people?
There's a super hot blonde that commented, how much...
Nick just demonstrated this.
How much...
Better be your wife.
It is my wife.
Yeah.
How much TV is okay? Now, I think this is where we might get different answers from Pete and John Mark. Not even that they might disagree on the amount of TV, but
3.7. Yeah. It doesn't matter which time denominator you use. It's just that
3.7.
3.7. Do you want to go first?
For yourself, for kids, for both. I
Give
think
us all of it.
Yeah, I think so. There's 2 different ways to approach it. One is like you do have to like pray about it and pray in the moment and everything of that nature. But I think there is like some objective criteria where we could say, okay, maybe sitting your kids down for a show for a half hour because it's just been nuts, been a terrible day. Okay. Do we go to an hour? Is that a little too much, at a time for kids depending upon their age range? I think we could probably delineate some markers along the way and say, okay, maybe that's too much. 2 hours. Yeah, it's too much, so bring it back down. I don't know.
Yeah, there's tons of, for us, there's tons of variables there. I mean, I don't think 2 hours of watching a screen is always wrong. If, for instance, we're getting together to watch a really epic family movie. We watched The Hunt for Red October the other day. You guys ever watch that old movie with?
But how old your kid that you watch that with, Dominic?
10.
So yeah, I think that's going to play into that too.
And mine wasn't counterpoint to you. It was just the example that the context matters, right? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Right, but
Well,
to
you
watch
said
like a cartoon
for 2 hours,
which is its thing every,
You're
or
being
like
blasted.
like I can't.
tended to like draw them in and keep their focus.
Like I don't think there's any movie out there that I should let my 3-year-old watch for 2 hours. Like I think that's too much for a 3-year-old.
Your 3-year-old, really?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, if my 3-year-old would sit on
100%.
my lap and watch it with me.
Most movies are like an hour and a half to 2
Yes,
hours.
I don't. Yeah, and
Even kids' movies, I mean.
yeah, and I don't think that's good for kids. I think that's one of the things that John Mark was talking about, like Facebook. It's not a morally neutral thing. If you're putting your kid in front of a screen where his mind's not acting in the same way that he would in some other ways, like more, name the thing, a book. Like I think that is. I mean, this gets to one of the other discussions we had, but I think that is something we should try to avoid. Just like you should try to avoid being on Facebook for over 45 minutes or an hour, whatever.
But does the content matter though? Because again, like the reason why I was kind of joking about that, it'd be great if my 3-year-old would sit and watch, is that the movie we're watching has no interest for a 3-year-old. Like if he's sitting there, I don't know why he would be sitting there. Like even for my 10-year-old, he's watching a movie that's very far beyond him. Like he actually has to really pay attention and listen to what these guys are saying, because there's no flashing lights and colors and unicorn. Well, he doesn't like unicorns, but Legos or whatever. It's definitely something. It's for him. That's more of a movie where he has to pay attention. It's very different than if he wants to sit and watch a Pokemon show or something like that, where it really is. That is precisely the kind of thing that is anti-meditation, to use Andrew's terminology.
Yeah.
So I think the content matters, I would say.
Yeah,
I
sit
think
down and watch Into Great Silence, that movie about the monks for 3 hours.
That
see how
takes
that
a little
goes.
bit of focus.
That's a
takes
straight
some
prayer.
Perseverance right there, man. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's just certain age levels that the kids should. I think there's actually been studies on the effects that TV has on the brain at certain age levels. So like at age 1 or 2, like if you're sitting your kid in front of a TV for a couple hours, like that's just, it's not good for them. And so I think, I don't know if 3 years old, there's a certain threshold, but I think, for us, my 3-year-old, the attention span, like I really struggled. We had Peter Pan on the other night when we were on vacation and wasn't our normal house. And so we found something that at least was like a little like acceptable or whatever. So we could debate Peter Pan, but
Right up until he gets the mermaids.
I don't remember watching that part.
They are scantily clad.
But yeah, let's say if it's something even unformed and it's about the life of Christ, I think all that imagery for a little kid, I think it's too much. That's too much on their brain. That's not helping them form the type of cellular strength that they need for the type of prayer that we've been talking about, that we want them to be able to enter into and to be present. Look, we just agreed that it was on, social media, and that's taking too much away from us. Just because the screen bigger doesn't mean it better, right? So
I don't agree. Bigger screen is always better.
Screens have an impact on our brain.
So I guess we can just point to the general principle that like different amounts of screen time and screen usage is appropriate for different people at different places in their development. Like there's no reason for children to have phones.
No.
Right.
They are certainly not capable of making good decisions with phones.
Just
I'm not sure we are.
Just like other
we're
things
not.
like
We're not, even more so them.
Yeah.
But there are also other things like that directly and obviously impact our brain chemistry, like caffeine. We can have coffee. I would never give my infant coffee.
What age do you start giving them coffee?
Well, we're Cuban, so we have different standards. It's a cultural thing.
No, there needs to be an objective right for everybody all the time.
What is the exact age?
Anyways,
How much time do we have in this? No.
we have exactly 0 seconds, as
Oh,
in
we nailed it.
we're 40 seconds over.
We nailed it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call that a nail.
that was nailed. I think we figured it out. We saved the day. So if you want to make another remind them.
Yes. Hey, listen, you need to go and check out our patron community. The League of Ordinary Gentlemen, and ladies are invited too. And can you get there by going to themenshow.com?
Eventually, if someone's watching the recording of this later, it'll be
For
fixed.
tonight, you need to go to awakencatholic.org.
Just send an
Org,
email to
com.
info@awakencatholic.org
Find the show
or
join the
DM us.
community. You can access the community through the awesome Awaken app.
Yep.
There'll be bonus content. Again, these live streams may be hidden someday, or maybe they'll be live, but you won't be able to watch the replay unless you're in the community.
Anything
The
could
point
happen.
is, there's going to be cool stuff
Anything
in
we
there.
can do to protect this
Anything
content
at all
so
that
that you give us money.
It's so important. In a neat little town they called Belfast, apprentice to trade I was bound. Nick, you gotta sing this with me.
I'm trying.
And many an hour of sweet happiness I spent in that neat little town, till bad misfortune came o'er me that caused me to stray from the land, far away from me friends and relations, to follow the black velvet band. Her eyes, they shone like diamonds, you'd think she was queen of the land, and her hair hung over her shoulders, tied up with a black velvet band. To our wonderful patrons, here is to you, to your health.
Cheers.
Blessings of the patrons. You don't
Yes,
have anything.
cheers.
I know. I need to fix that.
We
I'm
only
about to
have-
fix that.
The problem here,
Yes.
we're drinking water. It's all we could afford.
Listen,
because of our patron
don't-
level. For as little as $100 a month.
Oh my gosh.
You could get us green label, prime shelf alcohol.
So check out themenshow.com and please join our patron community. The League of Ordinary Gentlemen and Ladies are invited too.